The Jesus Trilogy, Book 2, Then There Were Two, Chapter 30, Part B. Got a prisoner, sir, one of the corporals said. Set him down here in the chair. The sergeant still did not look up. He kept writing on his report. What'd this one do? Rape another Hebrew? No, just... The staff sergeant now looked up at Jesus seated in a chair, a handkerchief over his nose and blood covering his clothes. What happened here? The staff sergeant stood. Sir, what'd you guys do? What'd this guy do? We had to detain him for questioning and... So you beat him up. Great. Jesus' left eye was already turning black and blue. He could see okay, but it was swelling and starting to burn. Though the blood from his nose was just a trickle, it was starting to hurt like crazy. Sergeant, I asked you a question. What'd this guy do? What were you questioning? The staff sergeant suddenly froze in mid-sentence. He had glanced across the room and saw the SL officer seated in a chair thumbing through a travel magazine. He hated SL police. They were nothing but trouble, into everyone's affairs, up to no good, but very dangerous customers. Can I be of help, Sergeant? The SL corporal asked. I need to make a report, sir. What's the nature of this man's offense? The SL officer rose slowly from his seat and walked slowly over to the staff sergeant standing next to the bloodied prisoner. He put his face right next to the staff sergeant's and stared with those steel-gray eyes. Sergeant, I will tell you. Now please sit down and write. The sergeant dutifully sat and picked up his quill. As he looked back up at the SL corporal, his eyes finally saw and his face turned sheet white. He dropped his quill as a feeling of dizziness and a wave of nausea came over him. On the armband with the two letters SL, but cradled in the L, was the number 4. He had heard of this special SL force, but had never come in contact with one. The SL stood for Secret Legion, but those with the number by the letters were members of a special force that was governed by no law. They had free rein and could arrest and kill at will. The sergeant knew there were supposed to be about 100 of these specialists worldwide. He had never come in contact with one and had no desire to do so now, but he had. He had heard that the lower the number on the sleeve, the longer the years of service. In fact, what he didn't know was that each of the 100 officers was given a number from 1 on up. When that officer died, his number was retired. What he also didn't know was that the SL officers 1, 2, and 3 were dead. The SL officer number 4 standing before him was now the ranking Special Forces officer in the world. He answered to no one but Caesar himself. Jesus, despite his misery, was carefully taking in all the proceedings. He finally spoke. You only speak when spoken to, the SL barked. Now, Sergeant, please write. Yes, sir. He picked up his quill, but his hand was shaking like a leaf. He put his little finger down on the desk to steady his hand. At 9 p.m. this evening, the said prisoner, what's his name again? Jesus of Nazareth. Yes, at 9 p.m. this evening, the said prisoner, Jesus of Nazareth, was accosted outside the Silver Shekel restaurant and bar. He had been seen having supper and conversation with Barabbas, son of deceased Abel, believed to be a member of one of the conspiratorial associations attempting to carry out acts of treason against the crown. The sergeant was writing as fast as his shaking hand would allow. Okay, he said. He was questioned at the site of the arrest. Though he was cooperative, he did not divulge any significant information or reason for said association with Barabbas. He was brought here for further questioning. By this time the blood had stopped flowing from Jesus' nose, and he put the kerchief down in his lap and folded both his hands. He looked at the sergeant as he transcribed for the officer. As Agent SL4 paused, the sergeant looked up at the prisoner and got a good look at his face for the first time since he was brought in. Once again he froze. His face turned white and his hands began to shake more than ever. Even in the dim light, SL4 could see the paleness of the sergeant's face as he could the other 2 corporals in the room, now seated adjacent to the front door. On the way to the station, the prisoner became combative, and the course of restraining him, his nose is bloodied. Jesus was incredulous, but the officer went on. We arrived. Sir? What is it, Sergeant? The SL-4 snapped. I can't. Sergeant, this is an order now, right? Sir? Sergeant? The shaking now had become extreme. A wave of nausea returned, and the sergeant began to retch, but nothing came up. My word, what's wrong with you, man? It's so typical of this Roman administration, this army. You get to a small place and all you can hire is incompetent help. Sir, I've got to get some air, please. Oh, all right. I'll have the corporal finish. Corporal? Sir, could I speak to you in private? The sergeant said as he weaved and wobbled his way to the door. What is it? The sergeant had just gotten through the door when he lost all of his supper. After a couple of minutes, his form reappeared at the door. The officer had kept on dictating. Now what? Go get cleaned up, you incompetent weakling. I'll be taking your badge anyway. You are fired. Sir, okay, take it, but please, just a word. Okay, all right. The officer of the SL-4 went over to the door. The sergeant said, Were you at the funeral? He retched again. The smell was awful. The putrid acid sent a twinge of nausea into the stomach of SL-4. No, I wasn't in the area. Do you know who you have detained in there? Yes, a subversive. I'll question him further and retain him overnight. I would not recommend that, sir. His voice was gaining strength. Why is that, Sergeant? So you can gain a little notoriety yourself? May I remind you that not 5 minutes ago I fired you, and I will make it stick. The persistent sergeant slowly went on. This is the man who saved Pontius' life at the funeral. Who is Pontius? The son of Pontius Pilate, sir. Now it was the SL-4 officer who turned pale. What? Are you sure? He said, now whispering. Jesus had heard every part of the conversation up until now. It was in all the papers. He saved Pilate's son's life. Didn't you hear of the botched assassination attempt on Pilate? I was in Damascus. He realized he shouldn't have given his whereabouts to anyone, but he had not heard of the story. Are you certain? Yes, he's somewhat of a local hero to the Hebrews here in Nazareth. A carpenter, lives out in West Nazareth. The SL-4 man was a man of great power, but he still had to answer to Caesar. He knew Caesar liked Pilate. It would not be good to upset any close friend of the emperor. SL-4 motioned the sergeant to come with him. They went back inside together and went over to Jesus. Sir, on behalf of the Roman government, I would like to apologize for any inconvenience you have experienced this evening. You are free to go and please forward any medical expenses to his office. The Roman government will appreciate your kind cooperation and silence regarding this evening's events. Do you have any questions? Jesus nodded in the negative. He got the picture. Here is a token of Rome's appreciation for your trouble. If the sum is not satisfactory, let me know and I'll provide further assistance. Please carry on, Sergeant. I didn't get your name, Sergeant. Owen, sir. Yes, well, you may contact Sergeant Owen here if you have any further needs. Good evening to you, sir. Jesus got up. He was still wobbly himself, but he steadied himself on the chair and worked his way out into the now chilly air. The light breeze felt good on his swollen, burning face. As he walked, his mind began to race. A couple of blocks away, he came on the place where his head hit the cobblestone road. There was a lot of blood on the rocky road surface. His blood. Even in the dim light, it appeared to be a lot of blood. He felt a little woozy again and sat down on the now bloodied bench to regain his equilibrium. He didn't know how he could work tomorrow, but somehow he must. The buyers would be there by 4 p.m. to get their chest. He still had a good 8 hours of work left on it, and rent was due again tomorrow. Even if one owned his own home, the Romans collected a monthly rent or tax. Caesar had declared all the property in the entire world to be his, and collected a monthly rent from everyone. Matthew would be by tomorrow evening for sure. The only way he could pay would be if he got the money for that chest. As these thoughts spun around and around in his concussed brain, the little leather bag he had received from the SL-4 dropped to the bloody cobblestone street. When it hit the ground, out popped a shiny silver shekel. Jesus could not believe his eyes. He reached down and picked up the shiny object and the bag, but as he bent over, the wooziness returned in earnest, and the bag dropped to the road again. As it hit the ground again, he heard a clang and saw two more shiny coins lying on the rocky road. He was too woozy to lean down, so he slid off the bench and sat down on the cold, hard road. A shekel was what he needed for rent. He stared at the two on the ground, not believing his good fortune. A sharp twinge in his nose made him remember the price he paid for these 2 coins. He grabbed the bag, noting it was still quite heavy. He turned over and more coins fell out onto the ground. Not 2, but 10 fell to the ground. It was more money than he'd ever seen at one time. The little bag still seemed heavy, so he shook it again and more coins fell to the cobblestones. His head was fuzzy, but he counted them anyway. 27, 28, 29, 30. He counted aloud. He could not believe it. He shook his head, thinking he was in some kind of delirious state. But looking down again, all 30 coins were still on the ground in front of him. A tear welled up and ran down his cheeks, the salt content burning like fire in his abraded skin. But he didn't feel it. A broad grin brightened his face. He looked up into the sky. The day star was still high and bright in the twinkling sky. "My cup runneth over," he whispered.